She's still laughing.
That's so funny. Welcome to 5 Lemons Left. We're the real stuff, the lemons making lemonade. So pucker up, because we're going to be discussing our life's lessons and the nitty-gritty details of our spiritual journeys.
Hey y'all, I'm Amanda.
And I'm Drusilla.
I'm Melissa.
Hello, this is Morgan.
And I'm Penny. Welcome to our podcast today.
So good.
Welcome everybody to another episode of 5 Lemons Laughing. And we are talking today about this whole political scene and how to navigate it from a spiritual perspective. So, yeah.
Sometimes it can be really hard, can't it?
Yeah, it can be really hard,
Yeah.
or it can be really easy. What?
Okay. Thanks for the reminder, Amanda.
Boo. So Penny, you want to start us off?
Yeah, I recently listened to a really great podcast, How to Disagree Better, by the Happiness Lab with Dr. Laura Santos. And it was so appropriate and so fitting that we had been talking about doing a podcast on politics. And I was the one that always said, no, I don't really want to get involved. And I realized I don't want to have conflict in politics. I mean, I don't know. I guess I grew up in a community where there were a lot of people on the other side of the politics that I was. And so I always felt like we were on the outside and they were on the inside. And so I guess didn't do a lot of talking about it. But I love that we're actually doing it after listening to that podcast, because, in A Course in Miracles, A Course in Miracles talks about the ego operates from fear, divisiveness. It wants to keep us separate. And of course, A Course in Miracles is all about love and unity and finding common ground and operating from there. And so in this podcast, How to Disagree Better, which I really loved, it talked about how the news has become more divisive over the past several decades. And it said that the research, I'm going to just read what I wrote down from it. The research suggests that it's spreading cynicism.
Mm-hmm.
It's the mean world syndrome, because more people tune into news, and because they're tuning into news and it's cynical, then it raises that they think it just makes people think that other people are not good.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's so much bad out there. So they think everybody's bad, especially if they don't think about how if they have created in their mind that they don't have the same beliefs as they do. So it just creates more and more divisiveness and cynicism, and then there's more separation, and it's grown much more negative than news has over the past years, especially when like CNN came in and they began selling news, and people, there would be, it wasn't like when it was just Walter Cronkite and and all those people. It's like a business. News is a business now. And because the news, pardon me?
And entertainment.
Yeah. Yes. And they talked all about the people that can create big things in news now just for the entertainment of it. And they don't even care what it causes for the rest of the world. So it's grown much more negative since the beginning of this century. And the presence of angry words and headlines has increased by 100% over the last few years. And the presence of fear has increased by 150%.
Mm-hmm.
And so there was a survey out that asked people, the news makes me feel blank. And do you know what the top responses were? What do you guys think the top responses were?
Anxious.
Angry or afraid.
What do you think, Amanda?
Anger or fear. Yeah, I'm going with Morgan's anger or fear.
hopeless,
Hopeless.
agitated, and despair.
Mm.
And that is so much lower on the vibrational chart that we always talk about. It's Hawkins. What is that?
Level of consciousness.
Level of
Yeah.
consciousness. Like anger, at least anger is a little higher vibration than hopelessness.
Despair. Yeah.
Despair.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And it said that when you really dig down, the vast majority of us, no matter what our political party is, we agree, but we
Right.
can't see beyond it. So there's all this false polarization out there. So if you're not a Republican or if you're not a Democrat, the Democrat thinks Republicans are rich know-it-alls, and the Republicans think that the Democrats are all stupid. I don't
Liberals.
know. Liberals, yeah. Yeah.
Baby
And,
killers.
but the reality is what they found is that 72% of Americans think that climate change is happening and that we should do something about it. 72% of Americans think this. 80% believe that racism is a problem and needs to be addressed. And more than 80% of our fellow citizens feel that we should be fighting for free press, freedom of speech, and gun control that is reasonable, like making sure that people get, looked into before they buy a gun. And 90% of Americans support everyone's right of a free and fair vote. And so if we could focus on what we really, that we really all agree, but there's so much divisiveness and the news is polarizing us with all this false stuff that it's just kind of crazy. So
Ooh,
I just
let me
thought
just
that I would.
throw, let me just throw this up in the air, right? What do you think is gained from keeping a whole society in hopelessness?
Money and power.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so too.
I think there are people that run news stations that are really into more power and more money and greed, and they don't care what they're doing.
So with following that line of thought is like, so if you keep people in hopelessness, you keep people in that, then you're keeping people tuned into the news.
Yeah. If you're keeping people in those lower vibrations, you're keeping them from their power.
Out of control.
That's why we talk so much here about the importance of forgiveness and raising our vibration and holding that high vibration of love. And like that is the point of power. That is where our power lies and our ability to affect change.
And the ego.
Yeah.
Goes, I think it's certain people's ego playing on our ego and where we sit in the world, and fear. And fear is definitely controlled by the ego. So it just all feeds into each other.
So there's a whole layer of like manipulation, right? When you're in those lower vibrations, this is what I'm kind of hearing is like,
Yeah, I
when
think
we're
you're more
manipulated.
you're
more
easily manipulated.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, and if that's all you do is, a lot of people, I mean, since the pandemic too, I mean, don't we see a lot more people isolating themselves and they get all of their information off the TV news? And if that's who you're talking to,
Social media.
or listening to, social media, like Facebook has a lot of interesting stuff that is going on too. But I mean, if that's all you're getting your information from versus talking to people and being with people, then I think that's also contributing to the state of our union.
Yeah.
I think we used to also have news that was like, we could disagree, but we didn't get it loaded from both sides with everyone's opinion. And so, and everyone's fear and everyone's their own divisiveness, their own isolation, their own fear, all of that playing in, and with the conspiracy theories and everything else. So it has was kind of like how are we going to work together to make our lives politically really great and elect people that are for the people?
Mhm.
Now no one trusts anyone. No one trusts people in their own party. No one trusts people from their own other side of the party because there's just so much attached to like what was simply news for us when we grew up,
Mhm.
you know. And I think I did read a report about a lot of people who, you hit it on the head, Penny, isolated, but a lot of people that are lonely can be manipulated very easily. They're just that sensitive and that raw, you know, and people take advantage of that.
Well, and too, Melissa, when we were growing up, news wasn't 24 hours a day. It was the 6 p.m. news, and that's what you got, noon and 6 p.m. and 10. Noon, 10, and 6 p.m. Well, maybe there was
Right.
morning news too, but it wasn't 24/7, 365 days of the year. And
And
so
I
I
think
think
they
that also,
to keep it going.
yeah, yeah. So then how do we work with all this and have stay in our spiritual energy that we so desire to be in? Like I mean, for all of our listeners out there, how do we keep, how do we stay in our Zen space and have all
Yeah.
this going on around us?
Yeah.
Yeah. What Morgan said earlier, like, really made me think differently about this conversation, like about like raising our vibration to get into our power. I don't remember exactly how you said, but you said something about standing in our power. So go back to that, Morgan.
Yeah. Well, I think it can be very tempting and very easy to get swept up into the fear, into the anger, into the blame and all of the stuff that, we've all been exposed to. And it takes a conscious willingness and a commitment to like to do the things that bring you peace and to not pursue the things that disturb your peace. So if you're not, at the level of like a saint or Jesus, and you can't watch the news without having your peace be disturbed, then you've got some forgiveness work to do before you watch the news. And it may be years or lifetimes before you have the strength to be able to watch the news without getting disturbed, or to be able to have a politically charged conversation without going into attack and defense. Like, it's just about knowing and choosing the things that serve you, not the things that are going to agitate you, that are going to upset you. It's like picking at a scab or picking at a sore in your mouth. Like, why are we doing this to ourselves? You know what I mean? Like, there's plenty of romantic comedies you can tune into instead of the news.
Let me put a big fat disclaimer out right now, right? Me personally am not talking about not voting. I'm not talking about not
Right.
standing up for what I believe in, right? So I'm just a big disclaimer. I'm claiming that. I'm not talking about not advocating or not expressing your opinion or working towards a different type of world. I'm not saying that at all.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But
So how do you see the oneness in someone that literally holds such a different political view as yourself? Like, how do you feel the oneness? How do you see the oneness? How do you move through that?
for me, it started with of several years ago of letting go of better than and less than, which is a real kick in the pants, and I don't recommend it for everybody.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah.
And for me, I remind myself, I don't know what anything is for.
Mhm.
I don't know if the party that I'm not voting for, if the other party that I'm not voting for wins and their candidate wins, if something great is not going to happen out of that. It usually, I mean, most spirituality, most philosophies, most religions promise that there's something better. So, there has to be, well, there doesn't have to be, but I try to have faith that no matter who wins, that there's going to be that promise revealed.
Yeah, that everything's happening for our greatest good,
Yeah.
right? That, yeah.
Yeah. I feel like it is such a fine line of protecting your energy and advocating for your values and your advocating for what feels like the most loving choice, and how to disagree. What was the name of the podcast? How to disagree better, how to disagree with someone in a respectful manner. And if what they are espousing is coming from a space of hate, how to really not stand for it and not judge the other person. Like, there's so much tangled up in this, and it is
boy.
dance. But we also have Jesus as an example. I mean, he was a revolutionary. Like, I know that there is one particular party who likes to claim him as their representative, but I don't believe that he would have been on either side in this day and age. Like, I think he would have been turning over tables. And so yeah, that is a tricky thing to figure out, is how to navigate speaking up for love, doing so with love, and not tolerating hatred, and not going into judgment for people who are, everybody's doing the best they can. I mean, I have political differences with people in my family whom I love dearly, and I know that they are pure of heart. I know they are. They have different resources where they're collecting their information, and it has caused them to form beliefs that are different from mine. So
That's so funny that you say that, Morgan. In this podcast too, they talked about this woman. They were talking to their friends, and this woman's grandma had voted for Trump, and they said, "Do you still speak to your grandma?" And she goes, "Of course I still speak to my grandma. Just because it doesn't mean that I don't love my grandma." But there are people that don't speak to their relatives when they have differing opinions. And another, it was just really fascinating, this podcast, because they did at Stanford, they did this test. This woman wanted to see if she could bring Republican and Democrats together to talk about the issues. They were going to just do a 10-minute Zoom call. They had a moderator. And they told the people, they set it all up, and they were pretty concerned that they might have to stop the meeting because their whole purpose for doing their study was to keep people safe also. And everybody said, "Oh, you're never going to get these people to talk and be kind to each other." Well, what it turned out that they didn't ever have to stop any of the Zoom meetings, that when you stop and listen to people and why they believe what they believe, you can find common ground. Like, this one person had a gun because he was gay and he felt unsafe, and he got a gun because he felt that then he could be in the world safer. And it wasn't because, whatever. And then when the other party heard that, they went, "Oh, that makes complete sense. I understand now why you have a gun." Not everybody maybe should have one, but they found that when they did a survey after this Zoom meeting, that 100% of them even wanted to have each other over for cocktails to have further discussions, because they were able to see that they agreed more than they disagreed. And so that's the problem, I think, that's out there, is we actually probably agree but nobody ever takes the time to talk to each other in this way, in a safe environment. And so, I don't know, it was really powerful.
I think I honestly have never met someone voting differently than I am that didn't have the exact same desires I have, which are peace in our country, safety, equal rights, um, love, belonging, all those kind of things. They just think it's going to come in a different way than I think it's going to come. And I think that goes back to what Amanda was saying. Like, I have my own beliefs, but how do I know that they're better than these people? Like the
They're
woman,
not, right? It's the thing. It's a belief.
it is a belief, right? And we all want to, as our teacher talks about, Jennifer Hadley, we all want to hold on to what we made. We want to hold on to those things. The ego does. I'm right. I'm right. I'm right. I'm right. And so if you just keep seeing our nation as everyone believing their thing and believing the other people are wrong, or I'm right and you're wrong, I'm better, you're worse, we are not going to get anywhere.
I know.
No.
I wish I could just tell everybody to turn off the news. You have to really, really dig and do an internet deep dive to find a true, neutral, old school news source where it's just hardcore reporters who really just want to do what reporting used to be. Like that was a admirable profession that people wanted to get out there and bring information to people that they wouldn't otherwise be exposed to without putting any spin or commentary on it, just to bring the news forth and to shine light on injustices and and now everything in the mainstream media is bought and sold by the government, by big companies, by big businesses. And there is old school news outlets, but you have to really dig and find them. And I just think there's no good that comes from watching the mainstream. I think that would make such a huge difference in our political climate is if people would just turn off the news. So that's rant over.
And I keep going back to what you said at the very beginning, Morgan. So as we've known each other for a long time now, and we've all seen each other working on our stuff. And also as we have become more confident in who we are, it is easier to turn off the news or, I like watching the news because it's a little bit of drama, and that's the only drama I have in my life, right? So I'm like, drama.
Nice. Good for you.
Ooh, lucky you, Amanda.
I know, right? Yeah. Same way with my murder TV, right? Or whatever my draw. I don't watch as much of that anymore, but it's the same thing. So I think about it with a different lens now, right? And I don't consciously, I'm healing this like I used to. But yeah, but I do
and what finish your thought. I'm sorry, Amanda.
I do have an overall sense of knowing. I don't know if it was Melissa or you, Penny, that brought it up. It's our, it's our knowing, right? It's like, what do we know and how does that influence what we see around us?
Exactly. That's exactly right. Because where I'm at today might be where somebody, or somebody that disagrees with me today might have been where I was 15 years ago, And so now I don't know, whatever I've done to have my beliefs right now, they might be where I'm at in 15 years. And so I think if I can just look at somebody that way, that's just the way they're thinking now. Who knows what they'll be thinking in a little bit,
yeah, to compassion.
Yeah. And when we know better, we do better, right? And so, yeah.
That's Maya Angelou, right?
I'm not sure.
I have what I do is not necessarily spiritual, but I just focus on something that's very, very important to me, and that's human rights. Like, I don't care who you are. I don't care what party you're in. I'm going to vote for human rights. I can't stand to see people being treated subhumanly when they're just as human and just like me, right? So that's my issue. And I have other friends who have like economic issues. That's their big thing. Like they're just really, it really triggers them. It's really what they want to see in the world. And so I have been trying to talk to my friends about these are not like our football teams. These are not like the teams of our state that we're rooting on, that it's mine against yours. This is really like our opportunity to help to see in the world what's really important to us. And so I have been able to start seeing other people that I know who are voting differently from me as coming at it just because they're really, it's something that's very important to them that's different from me and different from what's important to me. That's been really helpful for me. And I don't know if that is a spiritual principle or if it's just what I've
Kind of
let my,
sounds like acceptance.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like that's honestly how I have to treat elections these days. It's like the preferences. Like I would prefer if this outcome were to take place,
Yeah.
and then surrender and acceptance for whatever outcome transpires. And yeah,
I'm
it's
still
much.
working towards that, Morgan.
Yeah, I hear you. Well, yeah, me too. Me too. Me too, for sure. And what I'm realizing is I wish there was a course where you could practice disagreeing with people. It would be like almost like a debate club, but not specifically. Like you would literally be having just conversations with people and being coached about, okay, time to bring your tone down, equal out your tone. Cause I like, it is hard for me to manage my tone of voice when I'm impassioned about something. It comes across like I'm yelling at someone, and I'm really not. I'm just like impassioned, and something physiological is happening in my body. And I remember making my mom cry probably 4 or 5 years ago. We were in the car and something political came up, and I started talking to her like with my voice, my pitch changed, and I was talking faster, and it made her cry. Like, and I was like, I'm so sorry, I wasn't trying to yell at you. So I would just, and I still can do that. Like, I still get like, there is something that happens in my body and my voice changes, and it sounds like I'm yelling, and I'm not meaning to. I'm just like really impassioned about getting my point across. So I would really like some kind of class that coaches you through how to have conversations and regulate your speech.
So funny when you were talking about that, Morgan. I'm like, isn't marriage that? Marriage that class.
Yeah. Oh man.
I love Melissa and Morgan talking about values, like voting your values. And I've never heard it described it really, Melissa, when you said like, cheering your team on, right? I just want to see my team win, right? That's a whole different thing than what are my values? But that takes that takes work. That takes deep work. And then, talk about like what happens if you look at your values and you've lived a whole way, and then you suddenly realize that those aren't actually your values, right? That's requires a lot of inner strength, growth, like looking at the world different. Yeah.
Well, and we
And
did a podcast on determining what your values are and
Yeah.
how to go about that. So I encourage the listeners that haven't listened to that episode to go back. There's a couple of them on how to create them. And then we talked about our own personal values. And that's really could be valuable.
Wow.
and what if you do vote your values and you really believe in your values,
Mm-hmm.
and someone else wins that doesn't necessarily you know, make the decisions that you would make based on your values.
I'm moving to Europe. No.
Too.
Not me. Not me, because
I'm joking.
I know.
I'm actually joking.
Melissa isn't.
No, I don't. But she's
Just
not
like-
moving for that reason. Well, maybe you're not. A little bit. Okay.
But isn't that what faith is? Like, I don't know which one of us mentioned it at the beginning, like knowing, right? That it is, whatever happens is for the highest and best.
Mm-hmm.
There's a knowing that, right?
So I have a lot of people that come and stay with me at my house because I live in Denver, Colorado, and it's the really hot place to relocate. So I have had like 8 different kids, like in their 20s, come here, make this their nest, and then they go find places to live. So I've have all these really great
You're
conversations.
running a boarding house.
I am running a boarding house. Which
A
they
launch pad. Let's call it a launch pad.
Yeah.
So I've had these really great conversations. So one of them is that I really feel that some younger people, like let's say under 20 or under 30, don't realize that some of their freedoms have really been earned and fought for. And so I talk to them and say, yeah, but if you vote it this way, these freedoms might go away for you, right? So, and I think a couple things. First, they have to learn that on their own. Like just like when we're kids and we grow up and we were told up and down and sideways about something, and we just had to go do it ourselves and learn the hard way, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Experiential learning.
yeah, and secondly, maybe to get more freedoms, some of our people need to have them taken away for a little while to realize. So back to Amanda, what you're saying, we don't know what anything is for. Like maybe there is a future with less freedoms so that there's a future later with more freedoms than we've ever known on this earth. I don't know, right? So I don't know, but yes, there is, you all know I'm really working on letting go of control this year, like letting go. And that is one of the things I have to let go of. Thinking that I know everything, thinking that my opinion's right, and thinking that I know how everything's going to unfold in the future and that it's all going to be great. And it's not. We don't know. We don't know that every day we're going to wake up and it's going to be better, but we do know that from history and from faith that overall it gets better. So that is the control we have to give up.
And that is a spiritual practice, Melissa. Letting go of control. Penny, talk about that thing that you sent us, another link or whatever, let that person.
Let them.
Let them. Thank
Yeah,
you.
let 'em.
I knew it was something.
Yeah,
Let them.
let
Yeah.
'em.
Talk about that, Penny.
Wow. Yeah. So Mel Robbins has a podcast out about let them, just let people do what they're going to do. And in Al-Anon, I in her podcast, she talks a lot of the spiritual practices of ACIM and Al-Anon and everything that we're doing. But it's just basically in Al-Anon, I learned everybody gets to live life the way they want to, and it's not up to me to decide how that should be. And so in Mel Robbins' podcast, it was like, let them. If somebody wants to invite all your friends and go away for the weekend and they don't invite you, let them. You don't have to be upset about it. If everybody wants to vote Republican and you want to revote and you don't want to vote Republican, let them. And it's like letting people, let them, just let them do their life and have
live.
trust and faith. Yeah. What, Morgan?
Live and let live.
Yes. Yeah. 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 So it was that was also a powerful one, because a lot of times, I don't know, Melissa's letting go of control, and I am too. I'm a recovering control freak. And yeah, sometimes I don't want to let them. I want them to do it the way that I want them to do it. And yeah, so that's another really great podcast that was recently put out. Is that what you were looking for, Amanda, or was there
Yeah,
more that
no,
you
no, no,
wanted to
that's
dig
it.
into?
That's it exactly. Let them. Yeah, because how
Yeah.
many times, I don't know about y'all, but I've been in a bunch of conversations trying to convince somebody of that I'm right and they're wrong. And it's like going in it with that attitude, it never changes that, right? It doesn't. Like you
Yeah.
can, like I'm getting to the point now, like where I have started a conversation out in public in real life. And like I could, as soon as the sentence or whatever came out of my mouth, I'm like, nope. Like, if I could just, I would, but I'm just gonna let this play out for the minute or two left, and then I'm gonna move on, right? Because you could just tell, you get to the place where you could tell. And I don't need other people now to think that I'm right, except my marriage, right?
Right, back to that.
Go back to the marriage.
I want to say too that I think that even if, like, back to my thing about human rights, for me, even if my candidate doesn't win, I can still
Yeah.
this believe, think, hold in my mind everything about human rights that's important to me, and I still can change.
And you can still do something too, right, Melissa?
Yeah, yeah,
It
and I
doesn't mean
can
you can't do something.
change the level of the mind, which is a really big thing for Course in Miracles too. Like I can be the change. We've heard that, but I can be the change in my thoughts. I really try when I'm on like social media and I see, um, a rant, a rave, or a joke or something condescending or something about the candidate that I'm not voting for. I try not to put my energy into it. I try not to watch it because that's just the little things I can do at the level of my mind to change the
Yeah.
hologram, right?
That's inspiring.
And Jennifer Hadley talks about, and A Course in Miracles teaches about the Course in Miracles, and she talks about how there wouldn't be like a Hitler if there wasn't still a little Hitler in some of us, right? So we're seeing what we are still have going on inside of ourselves. So if I'm not in full loving, compassionate, in my mind, thoughts against or for other people, then I'm still going to see that in the world, right? So I
Yeah.
try to do shit up here.
Yeah. And I feel like one thing too is that where we can really affect change, besides working in the invisible and the spiritual and working with our minds, is at the grassroots level. But we always wait until these last few months before a big presidential election, and then we get all hot and bothered and antagonistic. But the real change happens in local elections and in small grassroots efforts. And so, yeah, absolutely. And I also think that what is helpful is just to do the next right thing, make the next loving choice. Because I've been reading a lot of historical fiction novels, and a lot of them have been based during World War II when all of those atrocities were going on. And like all the people who and granted, there could always have been more, but what about the people who didn't? But all the people who put themselves in harm's way to do the right thing, to protect those people who could not protect themselves, and to hide the Jews, and to funnel them out of the danger zones and stuff. All of the people who, even if they themselves held a different ideology, a different theology, a different whatever, like knew right from wrong, even though we're not really thinking in black and white terms with A Course in Miracles, but they knew the most loving choice. They knew the next right action, and they took it. And I just have to trust that, if the shit hits the fan, the wrong person is elected, and all of everybody's worst imaginings comes to pass, there's going to be way more people, boots on the ground, making the next loving choice.
Isn't that standing in your power, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we've talked a lot on this podcast about developing intuition, and like when there's noise in the mind, when there's noise, all this noise, you can't actually tap into the next loving choice. It's a whole lifestyle. It's a whole lifestyle.
Yeah. So what do they say when you're most, anxious and have a lot to do in a day and you don't want to do your 30 minutes of meditation? You should do an hour because you'd probably need it more than ever. And so, yeah, I love that, Amanda. Definitely during these times, we probably really, it would be a good idea to step up our spiritual practices that we do to keep ourselves centered and grounded. Our prayer, our meditation, whatever form of exercise we do, writing, talking to people that we can reason things out with, things like that. I think that's really important during these times.
That reminds me of the Meditation for Divine Government in the Violet Flame book. It's like such a beautiful practice. I'll have to find that and share it in our episode notes. But just blessing all government officials, not just the ones that you love, not just the ones that you agree with. You know what I mean? Like, yeah.
Yeah, and we have a prayer room in the Power of Love Ministry, and every night there is a woman that prays for all the world leaders in the prayer room, because they all need love and support and prayers, no matter where they stand in their ability to lead. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well,
yeah, I know. That was a lot. That was a great conversation.
Penny, before we close, I would love if you would share those statistics with us one more time, because I think they're so happy making.
Okay, yeah. So the research shows that 72% of Americans think that climate change is happening and agree we should take action. 72% of Americans think that. More than 80% believe that racism is a problem and should be addressed. Over 80% of our fellow citizens think that we should be fighting for free press, freedom of speech, and reasonable gun control. And 90% of Americans support everyone's right to a fair vote. And so we actually see eye to eye much more than we are divided. And so if we could just sit down and talk to each other versus, I don't know what we're doing, but oh, and there was another bit of research that they did, and the research was that if you go to somebody's place for a holiday that voted differently than you did, you leave the town and the home that you're in. If they voted differently, you will typically leave 50 minutes earlier than you would if you were in at a family that in a town that voted the way you did. Isn't that interesting?
That is
interesting.
Yeah, so I mean, it's just so interesting the way we can let our minds kind of run the shows and help it make us think that, well, it really is. I mean, you hit it on the head, Morgan, that you don't watch the mainstream news because it's there to create separation. A lot of it is. There's a lot of good there too. I do watch some of the mainstream news too, but I have to do it in small doses because I can get, sucked in, just like social media. Sucked in. Yeah. Any last thoughts from anyone on how to disagree better with the political atmosphere out there? Nothing. Okay. Well, we're wrapping up episode 96. That's episode 96. And I have a few little post-its, like we truly don't know what any, oh God, I've got my thing on. I cannot take it off. Okay, here we go. Right here. Oh, we truly don't know what anything is for. I mean, these are pretty standard Course in Miracles post-its that I'm doing, but whatever happens is for our highest and our best. And then I love what Morgan said right in the very beginning, do the things that bring you peace. And that's really, I think, the resounding message from today is like, just do the things that brings you peace. And go out and do your own research and stay, do it not just through mainstream news outlets.
Not all of it on social media. Because
on social media.
You've been targeted. So you're gonna get the same stuff delivered to you. So
I like my favorite one is values. What are your values?
Go out, find out what your values are, and then start voting to them. And know that it's our constitutional right to vote, and so get out and vote. Definitely, it's in a couple of weeks, and it matters. You don't want it. It said the news makes you feel hopeless, despair, and hopeless, despair, and agitated. So don't watch the news, and do something that brings you hope, because it is possible. It really, truly is. So with that, dear ones, we are missing our beautiful Drusilla. She's not feeling well today, and so we're just so grateful and thankful. She lives in Atlanta, and thank goodness Hurricane Helene, it missed her. I'm so happy. And we just really want to send prayers out to all those that were impacted by that hurricane. It's been devastating in many parts of the U.S. So with that, dear ones, have a beautiful rest of your day, and tune in next week. We'll have another riveting conversation about who knows what.
Bye, y'all.
Bye-bye.